Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last session of day 2 of the Mental Health in Journalism Summit. We've been together for 2 days already. One more day to go. Tomorrow is World Mental Health Day, and we're going to celebrate it with amazing sessions like the one we're about to have, which is going to be a conversation between two old ladies talking about the old times, and hopefully you like it. We're going to be talking about the Pulitzer Prize and the connection to burnout, purpose, and the future of journalism, and of course, mental health overall. So the Mental Health in Journalism Summit is the second year that it's happening. We have more than 800 people registered. We were at 700 yesterday, and a lot of you joined in the last day. Thank you. This year, we are focusing on the topic you're seeing on the screen, resilience for uncertain times. I don't think I have to tell you why. It is crazy out there, right? No pun intended. So we're here to talk about solutions, about how we can take care of ourselves, of each other, as a community, as an industry in the media profession. And this is all we're doing with the more than 50 sessions that we have ready for these 3 days. This summit is organized by the Self-Investigation. I am Mar Cabra. I'm the executive director of the Self-Investigation, and we are a nonprofit based in the Netherlands that works globally to promote mental health and well-being in the media. Why? Because us, media professionals, are one of the core pillars of democracy, and we need to be well in order to do our job well. We have helped more than 12,500 media professionals in the past 5 years that we've existed. And we also work directly with media companies. We work with The Guardian and the French news agency, AFP, and some other organizations. If you think we can support your organization, please be in touch. This summit is happening thanks to the generous contribution of the Fred Foundation, which is a nonprofit that supports social change and putting the humanity at its center. So thank you, Fred Foundation, for your support, and also for the support of all our sponsors and that have been generously contributing to make this summit as accessible as possible. Also, thank you to our outreach partners. You can see there many media supporting organizations from all over the world, because this is a global summit. We have speakers from more than 40 countries, and we really wanted to have all the voices from media professionals from around the world heard. And hopefully we've achieved that with an amazing program that has been proposed by the community. All the sessions that you are seeing actually have been proposed by the community, or most of them actually. So thank you the community for proposing such an amazing summit and program. I want to thank as well our team. You see them there. Let me just see if I can make this bigger. There you have them. We've been working for 2 days already in Triple, which is a co-working out of Madrid, Spain. And they have generously donated this space so that we can work together. We have Mariam, who's joining us here in Madrid, but from Egypt, and Paula, who normally lives in the northeast of Spain. She's also here with us. We also have Marcos and Pilar joining from other parts of the country. And the Triple team has been supporting us very nicely. And that's why I wanted you to know all of them. These are their faces, and hopefully they are not too shy that I've showed them. And we want you to spread the word far and wide. So please post on social media. If you do so, use the hashtag MHJS25, which is the acronym for the Mental Health in Journalism Summit 25. And of course, if you can, feel free to tag the Self-Investigation at Twitter or LinkedIn with the handles that you're seeing on the screen. We're not on Instagram or other platforms. Feel free to keep using the hashtag. We're keeping an eye so that we can amplify your voices in social media as well. If you're here because you just joined YouTube and you saw that something was happening and you're subscribed to the YouTube channel of the Self-Investigation, but you don't know what we're talking about, well, the Mental Health in Journalism Summit is happening for the rest of tomorrow. So you can still join us. Look at this website on the screen, mhjournalismsummit.com. summit.org, and you'll be able to see the program that's left, and you'll also be able to register for the sessions. So you're still in time to do that. Coming up next, we have a session called After the Prize, Burnout, Purpose, and the Future of Journalism. And in this photo, you see her very, very small. So let me bring her here into stage. Hello, Kate.
Hi, Mar. How are you?
Well, I'm actually tired.
I can imagine.
It's been an intense 2 days already. It's 7 p.m. in Madrid. But I actually am, this type of tired that it's good tired. You're tired. I'm tired, but I feel refilled from all the energy that we're seeing from the summit. How are you doing today, Kate?
I am not as tired as you. I'm in Washington, D.C., and it's 1 p.m., so I have more energy. And I will often refer to this good stress as eustress. It's the opposite of distress. And so that's what I'm feeling right now, is a bit of stress, but I'm happy and it's helping me engage. So I'm feeling okay.
That's great. Already giving tips from the get-go. Thank you, Kate. So Kate Woodsome is founder and publisher of Invisible Threads, and she's here to talk about her own personal experience and how that has evolved during the times. And Kate and I have something in common. We are both here because we quit the profession after winning a Pulitzer Prize due to mental health challenges. In my experience, this happened back in 2017. Back then, I was working for the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, which won the 2017 Pulitzer Prize in explanatory reporting for the Panama Papers investigation. Hopefully you remember that groundbreaking investigation that was at the time based on the largest leak in journalism history and also the largest investigative collaboration at the time in the journalism history. And at the time, I was the editor of the data and technology team in charge of processing and making sense of all that data. So you can imagine what a difficult time it was, what a stressful time it was. I ended up working sometimes like 16-hour days for 20 days in a row, and I ended up burning out. I'll tell you more about that later, but Kate, what happened to you?
At the time, I was with the Washington Post, and I was part of the team of the newsroom that was honored with the Pulitzer Prize for Public Service, which is the gold medal, which is essentially the highest honor a newsroom can receive. And we were granted this for our coverage of the January 6th insurrection, or the Capitol attack in 2021. It was a vast team of people from the local news side that had been covering DC politics and protests, to the national reporters who've been covering Trump, to I was the head of the opinions video unit, which was responsible for creating short documentaries, fast turn daily commentary and news, to even social media. And at the time, our team had been downsized. And so I transitioned over the past year to a player coach, where I was both a manager and lead producer and a reporter in the field, essentially to make up the gap of lost staff. And at the time, January 6, 2021 came after a year of global pandemic coverage, a US election that was very contested and contentious, and also racial justice protests in the United States, all of which were immense sources of pressure and really called on our sense of public service and our need and desire to want to be there to help tell the story for people who were stuck in their homes around the world.
And this is very important that you mentioned that, right? Because we get to the points where we get to as a succession of events. Okay. And when people ask me about my burnout, they tell me, oh, so was the Panama Papers that stressful? Yes, it was, but it came at the end of a very stressful process of 7 years of continuous cross-border investigations and tremendous change with technology and big data and analysis in the team. And you end up burning out or, having some challenges as a succession of events. And in your case, that coverage and what came before that led you to having post-traumatic stress disorder. How did you realize that you had PTSD, and how did that feel in your body?
Yeah, it took me a while to realize because I was so adrenalized from the entire year of covering very intense events to the Capitol attack, where I was surrounded and threatened by rioters. I was so adrenalized and functioning at such a high level intellectually, if I can say that, to be able to articulate and make order out of chaos and be, presentable for explaining to the world what was happening. So I was operating really from, neck up, brain, and I was ignoring my body. And so when I began to realize that my body was breaking down, I had stomach distress, my muscles were spasming, I thought I could just push through them. And over time, PTSD is different than trauma. Trauma is when your nervous system is overwhelmed and it endures stress that is too much, too soon, too fast, or too long for your nervous system to be able to process normally. I experienced trauma on January 6th, but without care and support and without, essentially structures in place to help me get grounded and feel more safe, that trauma untreated turned into complex PTSD. So over months, weeks and months, I was terrified. I felt that there was danger everywhere. Going into the basement to do my laundry, I was looking in corners and I was afraid of shadows. I was afraid to leave the house. When I left the house and I saw a hat, I thought it was a MAGA hat and I felt danger. And in addition, I was overworking at work because my solace has always been workaholism. That has been my addiction, and where I channel my energy, stress, good or bad, as I work. And so I began overworking in order to not feel bad or scared. I knew that work was a refuge for me, but I was really irritable. I was really impatient. I was really controlling, because trauma rips away your sense of control. And so all these little things over time added up to the point where my therapist finally said, I think you have complex PTSD, and you really need a safe space to heal and get grounded again.
Thank you, Kate, for being so open about that. I think that part of the journey and opening up the mental health space and breaking down the stigma is that we openly share how we are feeling and what were the signs that we missed. And it takes great courage. So thank you. I really want to thank you about that. I'm also realizing as I'm listening to you that I'm just going too fast today. So I'm just right now changing my energy,
Okay.
grounding myself. I used your listening to you to ground myself so I can also be with myself right now. And I think that self-regulation and observation and this self-investigation of ourselves is part of what we need to be constantly doing, right? Even if we have walked the talk.
Mar,
So thank you.
Oh my gosh. And let me just say, I love that you're doing this, because that is a perfect example of how we are in newsrooms, where we are hit with one story after another, deadline after deadline. We have different mediums. So we have to pivot from one form of technology to the other. And it's adrenalized and scarcity driven, right? And to slow down often means to lose out. So we have to unlearn and then learn anew. And so what you just modeled right there was like, is barreling ahead going to make us miss something? Is barreling ahead going to make us miss something, a sign in our body or in the source that we're talking to? So holla, way to go.
Thank you, friend.
Yeah.
So I actually think we don't stop enough in journalism to thank each other, to support each other, to how do you say, celebrate the wins, right? And I think that that's also important. So it's good that we brought it on the table. And I was listening to you and I was like, like so much of what you said resonates with my story. I had signs. My body was like screaming at me, like, you are under too much stress, Mar, you're under too much stress. I remember having health issues, physical health issues, way before the Panama Papers investigation, in previous investigations, 2 investigations before the Panama Papers. We published the investigation. It was called Luxembourg Leaks. And I went to the Philippines for a conference, and I took like a couple of days of holidays by the beach. And I ended up in the hospital because my ovary had twisted, and they had to take it out. And
Wow.
I was like, damn it, I am so unlucky. Here I am in the beach. And wow, so unlucky that I lost an ovary in the Philippines. Oh, I need to keep working. Oh, because my computer, the Philippines, does have internet. Therefore, it doesn't matter. I could be laying in bed and being in like doing things, or like connecting to video conference calls. And actually, the first thing I did right out of surgery, again, a part of my body had been taken out. The first thing I did as soon as I had internet in my room and I woke up from the anesthesia was to call my boss for 45 minutes over Skype. Because this is the over responsible person in me saying, oh, I'm not going to be able to go to the conference. We need to organize like the work and the conference, everything. The first thought, right? And I didn't see that as a problem. I was like, oh, I'm such a good reporter. I'm so committed to what we're doing. And that's what tends to happen, right? And we miss all the signs. I had many others, but I think the importance of listening to the body is one of the key core messages that we wanted to convey today.
I mean, what a rich and very vulnerable and personal share that is, that I think so many people can resonate with, whether you have ovaries or not. I mean, how many of us have ignored, huge screams from our body that something is amiss, and then thought, the way that I am valued or what I am worth is my productivity. So even though I'm handicapped in this way, or I'm sick in this moment, I want to still show that I'm worth and prove my worth. I'm worth something and prove my worth. What came up for me is, I don't know if this resonates, but my identity and self-worth for years and years and years, and it's still a process, is totally enmeshed with my career, right? How professionally successful, what public impact I could make, am I making a difference? It was all external. And so that need to be on, even when I'm in pain or ailing, was totally connected to whether or not I was a human being or a human doing. And human doing is what I registered as valuable to my tribe and society. Does that resonate at all?
Totally resonates. I'm thinking that actually it took me a long time to decide to quit, because I felt I was exhausted before the Panama Papers, and I didn't feel I was the head of the data team in charge of processing the largest leak in journalism history. I didn't feel it was responsible to just say, hey, I'm exhausted, bye. So I stayed on, and of course I did many things to take care of my well-being then, but it ended up taking me a long time, even after we published the Panama Papers, to say, hey, I really need to stop. And when I quit, I decided to quit in end of September 2017. We were about to publish another investigation, and I just didn't have it in me, right? So I said, I cannot go through another investigation, because I know after publication, then because we had a great impact, and that's what we were hoping for, great impact, then it would last for months after publication. So I ended up quitting, and then I was like, but who am I? Because my name actually was not Mar Cabra. It's like Mar Cabra Data Editor ICIJ. That was my name. So who's Mar Cabra? And I was like, who am I? Like all of a sudden I'm like, but who am I? And I started having this very deep, meaningful philosophical questions about my identity, because I no longer had my name was like, they took like a surname out of my passport, So totally resonates. Yeah. And actually, let's dig deeper into why this happened, right? Because we've now explained in both our stories what the signs were, what we missed. We're also explaining them so that you can recognize them, the signs in yourselves, the audience, as you're listening to this. So hopefully by spreading our story and sharing our story, you don't have to go through the same struggles that we went through. And in my case, it took me many years to actually realize it was not my fault that I burned out. I felt guilty. I thought I was an unfit to be a journalist, that maybe I was too young or I was not, whatever. There was something missing in me. And it took me a long time to realize there were many reasons behind my burnout, including the role my previous company had in my burnout. And hyperconnectivity and the fact that I was doing two jobs also played a role, because you said you had two hats. I also had two hats, because right after the Panama Papers, the ICIJ started a spin-off process from its parent company and ended up landing it into a new independent company. So a lot of work there. Tell me a little bit about why you think you ended up having post-traumatic stress disorder beyond, of course, the coverage that you did, because you had a similar experience of all these factors that you realized about.
Yeah, well, you know, when we look at public health or mental health or even political health, I think it can be very helpful to take what's known as an ecological lens or an ecological framework, understanding that our well-being, our individual well-being, is interrelated, interconnected to the community around us and the system around us. So it's this constant flow between individual, communal, systemic. And so very often in a newsroom, you know, when we are doing well and we win prizes, we really like to look at how the teamwork and that ecology benefited us. When there are problems, very often it is put on the individual. It becomes an HR issue, or they couldn't handle the stress, right? So it took me some distance to be able to look at the ecology of what led to my health challenges. And one that you mentioned was that I was wearing multiple hats. So there was not true clarity of roles. And that can be confusing both for the person wearing multiple hats, not really knowing what you're being measured by, or what measure of success applies to that role versus that role. But it also can cause confusion, frustration, and distress for the team that you're leading or the team that you're in if they don't know how to relate to you. So that can create tension as well. In addition, at the Post, I was in the opinion section, but I was a news employee. And so at the Washington Post, there historically has been a strong editorial line between news and opinion. And they don't really talk to each other to help the audience differentiate between the two. But I was a news employee in opinions. And so we were essentially like the stepchildren or bastard children with no real parent taking care of us. So we were kind of an island without infrastructure support. Really poor lines of communication. We went out on January 6th with, bulletproof vests that the Washington Post gave us, but no formal training, no, really strong tethered safety checks. And so all of that, coupled with unrelenting coverage and a reduction in staff and a reduction of resources, reduced our resilience as a team and my resilience as a person. In addition, and so let me just, with that, I think it's really important for people to recognize how well a person does after experiencing adversity or a traumatic event. How well they do after the fact often reflects how well they were doing the day before. So if you are totally depleted, if you're totally exhausted, if you're overworked, if you're way beyond your stress capacity, and you have a traumatic event or an adverse experience, your cup is going to be a lot emptier, and it's going to be a lot harder to be able to recover and to navigate well. If you are well supported, if you are well slept, is that a word? Well rested, you'll be able to draw on, fuller reserves. And the other part of this, when you look at trauma and even burnout, is that if you've had past adversity or past trauma or not fully recovered from burnout in the past, that can exacerbate your experience when you have new trauma or adversity. So I grew up in a very unstable environment as a child, which propelled me to do great things and became a superpower to be able to endure high stress and chaotic environments. And that superpower, which is often lauded by newsrooms when it is working for them, can become more of a vulnerability when new adversity hits. And so all those factors are what layered upon me, really struggling to regain my footing.
Thank you so much for explaining all that. And you might be wondering, oh my God, this lady knows so much about nervous system regulation. Well, she's specialized on that, and that's coming up next in the conversation. But before I continue the conversation with Kate, I want to tell you all who are listening right now that we want to hear from you. So please post the questions in the chat of YouTube. It should be under the screen probably, so that we can voice your questions and add them to the conversation. So I said at the beginning, this is a conversation between two old ladies. We want to have a conversation with all of you, like we were in the same room. Feel free to post the questions in the chat as we continue this coffee with Kate and Mar. And it's interesting, right? Because both our stories are similar in that we quit journalism, but we decided to come back in a different form, right? A lot of people quit journalism and they go to communications, or they go to other better paying jobs that are less stressful and that promote more work-life balance. And we ended up wanting to come back with a different hat, turning trauma into service. Mm-hmm. And in my case, I'm now the executive director of the Self-Investigation, which I said at the beginning, it's a nonprofit that promotes mental health within the media community. But I have to say, my first move was to go away from journalism as far as possible. And I ended up coming back to support journalists, as many colleagues asked me questions about how can I not burn out like you did. And at the beginning of 2020, I co-founded the Self-Investigation with the help of the coach that helped me recover, and another colleague who's a journalist and a coach. And we're still doing this because so many people are coming to all the activities that we have, and our work is still needed, sadly. My dream that we cease existing because mental health becomes a core business strategic value of all media organizations. Yeah. In your case, Kate, you quit the Washington Post, and right off the bat, actually, you started your Substack, which we're showing here, and I'm going to share the link as well. Oops, sorry, wait, just hold on. I'm sharing the wrong thing. Here it is. So we're sharing the link there. And tell us a little bit about the Substack, and then we go into why you know so much about nervous system regulation.
Yeah, so I took a buyout from the Washington Post in December 2023, and maybe 3 months into 2024, I began the Substack Invisible Threads, which uncovers the ties between mental health and democracy. And I wasn't fully ready to leave the Post, but I was really determined to try to help improve the system that I felt had not served me well, and also that I felt I had also perpetuated unhealthy, practices in the system of news, where I was, really pushing at a high level of stress. And even though telling your staff and your colleagues, take time off, if you don't take time off, you're modeling unhealthy behaviors, even though your words say to be healthy. So I hadn't fully uncoupled my mission yet. And when I left the Post, I was really connecting the dots between individual well-being and collective well-being, and noticing that my mental health within a system, which was the media ecosystem, within a political system, was all part of the same dis-ease or ease that we were experiencing. We were having technical issues, I think. So I was recognizing that I was part of a media ecosystem, a political system, a social system, and my own individual nervous system. All of them, depending on what inputs you have and what support you have, contribute to well-being or ill-being. So the Substack began as a way to help people begin to look deeper at the roots of our political and social problems. And, you know, let me just back up here. I went into journalism in part to better understand abuse of power and how people recover from trauma. And that was informed by my own, family's experience, intergenerational trauma. And I really wanted to know what perpetuates or disrupts cycles of harm. And so I, went to Cuba. I worked in Cambodia for 4 years. I worked in Hong Kong. I reported and told stories from South Sudan. And all of that brought me back to Washington, D.C., where I was reporting on the Capitol attack. And I saw the kindred themes that in all these countries and cultures, that people are in pain and they want to feel better. And we don't understand the roots or upstream causes of this pain. We often are caught in cycles doing the same things, expecting different results. And at the Post, I often found that in terms of well-being, they wanted quick fixes, 5 ways to reduce stress now, or 3 yoga poses that can help tighten your belly and clear your mind at once. And I think that that's really important. And also, without understanding the systems that we live and work in, without understanding the roots of this stuff, we're just going to perpetuate the same thing over and over and then blame the individual when you can't stretch your way out of feeling bad. So that is what motivated the Substack that then grew into a bigger vision.
Right. And we're going to get to that in a second. But I wanted to just stop for a second and reflect on something that you said, right? I was listening to you, I was thinking, wow, she's done so much reflection, self-reflection on her own story and how our own story, our beliefs, our own family and systems that we come from inform who we are. Yeah. And I think that that's such a key work to do in order to know who we really are. And in my case, a lot of years of therapy and coaching have helped me understand as well where I was driving towards and understanding whether I wanted to get there or not. In my family, work has been a core value. It's fascinating because I've grown up looking up to my dad, who's a person that works, so many hours in the day and traveling, and I wanted to be like him. And my mom would keep telling me, Mar, you're going too fast. Mar, I see you're very tired. Mar, you really need to take a break. And I was like, Mom, there's no time for a break. This is so important what I'm doing. And that's part of like what I've been chasing all my life. And when I burnt out and I saw that success really sucked, I was like, wait a minute, I should have listened more to my mom. And now actually part of what drives me is to really follow her lead and follow some of her wisdom. So I think that doing that self-investigation of our own systems is key to understand who we are and also what motivates us. You spoke about motivations, Kate. Looking back, there are so many mental health connections in my family, in my own personal story. That right now, when I have to explain that I do mental health, if I look back, there are so many connections. And I remember this sentence by Steve Jobs, right? You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And now it all makes sense. It's like, oh, all these things led me to doing mental health work now. How did I not see that? Well,
yeah. And you don't have to have directly experienced a mental health challenge or trauma yourself to be affected by it. Because again, if we look at our well-being as a product of systems, there's a lot of intergenerational trauma all over the world that is affecting the way people relate to each other. So when I think about the health of democracy, I think about the health of our relationships with ourselves and the health of our relationships with other people. And what are the conditions or the cultures, the policies and practices that affect how well we're able to take care of ourselves and how well we're able to relate to people, to sit with discomfort, to navigate challenges. And so, 70% of people in the world will have experienced or been exposed to a traumatic incident. And 60% of people will experience, at least in the United States, at least one adverse childhood experience. So, and think about, how countries were formed or how countries were conquered. We have generations and generations of people who have been through or committed very bad things, right? And that has an impact on all of us. And we are the systems. The systems are built by humans. So it makes sense that many people listening right now, you and I, are products of even if we just want to say stress, right? Cycles of stress and reactivity. And when we begin to question, like you suggested, what's my motivation or what's underneath this, that can be really, really helpful. It also can be really scary for people because sometimes when you look in, there's stuff we don't want to think about anymore. And so it's really figuring out, what do I need in this moment to feel level and balanced so that I'm taking care of myself, but I'm not numbed out. I'm not ignoring myself, kind of repeating the crimes against ourselves.
This is interesting that you mentioned that because it's actually the great segue to understanding why you know so much about these issues, right? So on top of Invisible Threats, you became a fellow after leaving the post, and fellow and visiting affiliate scholar at Georgetown University.
Mm-hmm.
And you also became a certified coach in a healing approach called the Resilience Toolkit. And you helped co-develop a framework to help people transform cycles of healing in social and political change. So let me ask you something. You've already given us a lot of tips embedded in your questions. What would you tell pre-Pulitzer Kate?
What would I tell pre-Pulitzer Kate? I would tell her, you are a human being, not a human doing. Or you can be both, but being a human being is most important. And that means really knowing what you need to be safe and healthy and connecting head and body. So much of our work in journalism, including the trauma programs that they bring in, are cerebral, head up. And so I would say tune into what your body's telling you and learn to respect and respond to it. And the other thing I think, well, I'll yield back because I know you have other questions.
Oh, no. Sometimes I'm putting you big on screen so that we see you. We don't need to see myself speaking like Maddie. But so what's the other thing you were going to say?
Well, and this dovetails with a question I think you might ask later, but what's the trouble with our industry, or what's the trouble with newsrooms? And what I would say is, journalists are often told you're not the story. You tell the story, you're not the story. And that is true to some degree, but all of us bring our personal experiences, our personal experiences, our personal histories, our family histories, our class, our race, our gender, our health, all inform the way we look at the world. They all inform the way we ask questions, and they all inform how we relate to the sources whose stories we're telling. And so our stories affect the stories we tell, which means that we also need to be tuning in to how are the stories we tell, how are they affecting us? I know that's convoluted, but so much debrief is done in newsrooms about how did we tell that story? What was the shot? How is the lead? How is the writing process? What did we get from the source? How could we do better next time? There's so little debrief about how did the story affect you, and what in your past might be coming up because of it. I think that when we tell journalists, you're not the story, we need better language. It needs to be more nuanced. You are not the story, and also the story can affect you, and you can affect the story. So that's what I would tell the pre-burnout Kate.
Well, yeah, thank you for saying that. It actually makes me think that that's similar to what I would tell the pre-Pulitzer Mar or pre-burnout Mar, which is follow your passion and you won't feel like you're working a day in your life. And don't forget that you're your passion as well. or don't forget to take care of yourself.
That's so
Because
good. I mean, because that followed my passion. I never felt like I was working. I was so happy. Somebody once asked me what my hobbies were, and I was like, working.
right, and it's okay as long as you understand you are part of the equation. We have a sentence motto at the self-investigation, which is you are more important than your work. You need to be well. I need to be well to do the work. So for example, today, in the middle of the summit, because I have a big team here that is supporting, I went to the park that is 5 minutes walking from here, and I took a nap, because I would not be able to have this face and this energy without that nap. And I wanted to be of service to our amazing audience and to you and to this conversation and to myself by being my best self. And that sometimes requires taking a break, that sometimes requires, asking for support, that sometimes requires rebalancing workload and having conversations about how we're doing, as you're saying. So very little debrief in newsrooms. And by the way, let me just get this right, because I just realized the fact checker in me and the overachiever in me and the perfectionist in me realized I mentioned the framework that you co-developed wrong, because the resiliency toolkit and the framework you co-developed helps people transform cycles of trauma to cycles of healing in social and political change. And I think I misread that. So I wanted to just get it clear on the record while we're on it.
Yeah, and let me give credit to the incredible people that have contributed to my healing and my learning. So the resilience toolkit was developed by Nkem Ndefo, who's the founder and director of a group called Lumos Transforms. And what it is essentially is a very accessible way of learning to read your nervous system, So better understanding what are your states of stress, which seems so simple, but how many people actually are tuned in to what their body is telling them. And so you develop nervous system literacy to be able to know what your body's telling you, and then to fact check it. And I say fact check because very often when we're experiencing high levels of stress, that stress reaction might not necessarily be to what's happening right in front of us. It might be a stress reaction to what we see on our phone or what we've had experienced in the past. And so learning to read your nervous system, learning to fact check it, and then bring in really simple tools to bring us back to an optimal state of stress so that we are grounded and resourced and more empowered to be able to engage in this hard work. So that's the resilience toolkit, which I learned for myself and then became a certified coach in, and that's been transformative. And I realized that, I think every newsroom should be doing this. Prevention is better than cure. So often it's catastrophic response and training after the fact. But if we can do preventive nervous system literacy and somatic, which means body tools, simple, be amazing. The framework that I am helping bring to life with Georgetown University is called the Red House Journey Framework. And it was born out of a collaboration between Georgetown University's Red House, which is a research and design innovation unit, and the Wellbeing Project, which I know that you helped lead their global summit in Slovenia, where I first met you. And it was created with the input of global leaders in trauma and healing and artists and thinkers, helmed by a man named Randy Bass, who leads the Red House Innovation Unit at Georgetown. Really defining work by Maze Imad, a neuroscientist based at Connecticut College, who is doing beautiful work on rehumanization, and Dr. Kathy Powers, who focuses on restorative justice and trauma healing, with a whole larger team of people who've so thoughtfully brought this to life. And that is to help people begin to see the patterns of reactivity, the cycles of harm, the cycles of trauma, the cycles of reactivity that we are looped in on an individual level, a communal level, and a systemic level. And then when you can begin to see what that looks like and what contributes to it, then you can say, okay, so where is an intervention point, and what is needed to intervene to disrupt this cycle of harm? And what is needed to reorient it to be a cycle of well-being. So, you know, a lot of people are wringing their hands in the United States. Let me say, the United States is in a deep, deep political crisis. It's in a deep mental health crisis, and climate crisis. You know, it's a really very dire time. And people are both very activated, anxious, and also feeling helpless, like they don't know what to do. So what I'm in the process of building is a media and leadership lab that essentially follows the idea of awareness, agency, action. You have to be aware of the problems, you have to be aware of the solutions, and you have to go to the roots. It can't just be here's the solution. You have to go to the roots of what's driving these ills. That awareness creates a need for agency, the ability to stay calm when things are so hectic. So that's the nervous system literacy and the ability to ground yourself so you can be engaged. And then that agency creates hopefully a hunger and a thirst to take action. And how do you want to take action? Do we want to do the same things over and over? Or do we want to engage in systems change that actually has intergenerational well-being as the goal? So if anyone asks if I'm still a workaholic, apparently I am.
And at the same time, I think that you are so much more aware that you keep regulating before you get too far, right? And I think that that's part of the key. We don't have to lose our passion. We don't have to just like miss out on work. We just have to relate to it in a different way and in a more conscious way.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. I mean, yeah, taking care of myself now is part of the public service, right? And that's the unlearning.
Yeah, and in your words, I really appreciate that you brought the system and how we're a system. So it's us, and it's the media, the duty of care of media companies, and there's more of a systemic issue, like an industry, the way we work in the media, and some speak of the Pulitzer curse because there are a lot of Pulitzer Prize winners that end up quitting journalism in some case because, or in many cases actually, because of mental health challenges, right? And I think that this framework that you're developing, it actually helps see that it's not just us and that we're part of something bigger, and the role of all these key stakeholders here. And I think that this is a good moment to actually show one of the questions, because Lisa is actually asking us about one key player in the industry, right? How do you think we help newsrooms see the value of this work and get them to fund it, especially when we see constant budget cuts?
Yeah, so this is, a forever conversation. And after I left the Post, I did some consulting work for a group called One Mind at Work, which does beautiful work on helping to support mental health in corporations and businesses, not newsrooms. And they're constantly trying to figure out, how do you incentivize companies with very little budgets to improve the conditions for their employees? And a lot of times what motivates people is math and money. So if you add up the cost of lost days or turnover, or for companies that are providing healthcare to their staff, it becomes very, very expensive if you are not addressing mental health, well-being at the root. If prevention is better than cure, again. So the catastrophic response for insurance is a lot more expensive. Turnover, replacement, a lot more expensive. So that would be one way to, speak the language of business. And then the other one is, like any change movement, it's very small. And oftentimes you're talking to the people who are receptive before you're talking to the people who aren't. And so it's having small conversations in the newsroom with others, ideally finding somebody on your level who agrees with you or sees the benefit of this, who then might be connected to somebody on a different level, whether it is up or down, right? And then widen the conversation to that different level, up or down, so that you grow a consensus around this. And, a lot of this stuff isn't expensive, but it's the culture. It's the culture change that is the most valuable prospect. Good question.
Thank you.
Lisa.
Yes, so we do have other questions, but I just wanted to add that coming back to this economical aspect and productivity aspect is key when talking with human resources departments, who are the ones who have the budget. And that's our experience in the past 5 years at the self-investigation. Whenever we've worked with a media company, we talk directly with human resources. And one of the things that we use is we talk to human resources who are actually a better ally than some might think, who are really concerned and many times tell us, man, I don't understand these journalists. I'm putting up these resources, I'm putting up these activities, and for them, they're not coming because they don't have the time, right? So then you have to do the pin. I call it the clothespin strategy, like the clothespin for the clothes,
Yeah.
Which is, now you have the allies at HR, and then you need to find allies within the newsroom, right? And join forces so that you can spread the word and convince the others and advocate inside the newsroom. And actually, even in some newsrooms, they have the role of the person that is the bridge between HR and the newsroom, right? So Reuters has this role, AFP has this role. These are journalists who are in between HR and the newsroom to support with learning and development, with training, with things connected to mental health support. So those are great functions as well to have. Or in the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation has a chief well-being officer, I think that's, or no, sorry, well-being champion, Dave Seglins, who's one of the speakers of the summit. So I think there are also different ways to start spreading the word and opening up the conversation, which is a slow process, as Kate was saying. We do have another question here that I wanted to bring to the screen from Nukana. What brings about the constant confusion in the head while on duty and feeling limited?
So, Nukana, if you want to explain more in the chat about what you mean by that constant confusion, that will help me. And in the meantime, I can share the tension that I would feel in myself when I was on duty and feeling limited. So the limitations that I would feel were both in my own energy and my own reserves and my ability to think clearly, for example, if I was totally exhausted or burnt out, plus the feeling limited in terms of resources. And the constant confusion for me very often was, what is my measure of success? And how will I be evaluated? You know, is for a long time, it was, how many people are watching your videos? How many clicks are you watching your videos? So even before I was burnt out, my team was churning like a video a day, trying to get a hyperviral video, right? And that really requires, what's our goal here? What is the public impact? What is the depth of the conversation? Is this just noise? And so the confusion is multi-tiered. And I think it requires constant recalibration within yourself and in conversations with others. Where it gets tricky is like, if you're in corporate media and you know, your boss is being evaluated, his or herself, on how much ad revenue you bring in based on the clicks that your story or your video gets, that trickles down to you. And again, it's that scarcity-driven, adrenalized, fear-based ecosystem that we're all a part of. So part of the confusion, and now I'm opening up a whole other can of worms, is moral injuries, where your actions are in contrast to your values. So if I am beginning to wake up to the fact that the news industry that I entered, you know, more than 20 years ago is now a rage machine, that's not what I intended to be a part of. And that tension, that conflict, can become a deeply uncomfortable source of dissonance that requires self-reflection and addressing it, whether or not you are okay with it, whether or not you pivot the way you deal with it, you know, whether or not you talk to your bosses about, this doesn't seem to be helpful to me or the community we're serving. And if you're in a system that is not receptive to that, then you have to do some really hard thinking about, can I do good in the system that I don't feel is aligned with myself?
Thank you, Kate. So we're actually running out of time. We're over time, but it's the last session of the summit, so we actually had a few extra minutes. And before asking you a closing thought, I really wanted to highlight and show on the screen this comment from Olga, who's actually been participating all throughout the summit with amazing comments. So thank you, Olga. And she's pointing something that is great, which is like, it's not workaholism, it's not burnout, just lots of hard work and devotion. If you're really have meaning and I would add, are taking care of yourself, right?
I think that's a brilliant distinction. And I would add, if you have a sense of self apart from your work, right, and you have other outlets and are taking care of yourself, then it's passion. I am leaning towards the passion now, as opposed to, I really do think it was workaholism before. But good. I think it's really interesting to tease these ideas out. Thank you, Olga, and thank you everybody who weighed in.
Yes, thank you so much. And speaking of the industry and the role that we have as an industry, this whole conference main goal is to connect us with each other and to be able to learn from what people are doing around the world so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and to foster the power of community. And we're also pointing to the role and the duty of care of media organizations and all of our organizations. And that is why the self-investigation launched last year, the Mental Health in Journalism Pledge, which is a pledge that dozens of people and organizations have signed up already, and that we want to encourage you to sign, because it's a way to show your commitment to this work and the role of media companies as well. Kate, before we leave, I want to end the conversation on a hopeful note.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about what's one wish for the future of journalism that you have? But let me just say, let me give you like a little, since you were like,
I should have.
Let me just say, the wish, at least on my end, is that we create a system so that no more people keep dropping out of the system. So we create a healthy culture so that no more people keep dropping out of the system like we did, right? So we are able to find a way to relate to this work and this passion in a way that doesn't kick us out. So what would your wish be?
I think my wish is that newsrooms really learn and embody the difference between resilience and grit. I think we pride ourselves on grit, which is barreling through adversity and difficulty at the expense of our health and often relationships. And that is, we're like action figures, that grit or that grace under fire. I would love if we leaned into resilience, which is the ability to adapt to challenges by pulling on resources that are both inside yourself and outside of yourself. Meaning, if you learn nervous system literacy and resilience skills, and then you have an organization that is receptive to the fact that mixed roles can be confusing to everybody, or being able to draw on different sources of strength, that is resilience. And we need to reduce, I think, the focus on the individual, which successful newsrooms will always say it's a team effort until something goes wrong, and then it's put on the individual. My hope is that we shift that perspective.
And I really think this is going to happen with the work of people like you, like the self-investigation and many other organizations. We have more than 160 speakers in this conference. And as I said, more than 100 people registering from across the globe. And I think that just shows of how this is an unstoppable global movement that is going to lead us to this beautiful future that you outlined. Thank you so much, Kate, for all your wisdom.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Look at the space you created. It's incredible. I'm really grateful and proud to be in this space. Thanks. And thank you to everybody.
Yes. So I'll say goodbye to you.
Okay.
Kate, I'm going to say some closing logistical things before you all go. So thank you. Big kiss to across the ocean. and before we go, I just want to remind you about a couple of logistical things. It's the end of day 2 of the Mental Health in Journalism Summit, but we still have one more day to go. Tomorrow, October 10th, is World Mental Health Day, and we're going to be celebrating it with a lot of powerful sessions. If you think, I'm not going to be able to attend, Mar. Don't worry, we're recording most of the sessions. You can access them in this link on the screen, but it's also on the chat. We'll be on the chat soon. So register for accessing the recordings afterwards so you don't miss out on the key sessions just because of an agenda issue. And of course, you're watching us on YouTube, so subscribe to the Self-Investigations YouTube channel to look for more beautiful content and insightful content like this wonderful conversation we've had with Kate. I want to thank all the volunteers that have helped us throughout this day and yesterday and will help us tomorrow, because their work is amazing and we won't be able to be doing this without you. Thank you for donating your time as well. And tomorrow, we're opening up the day with a conversation on constructive journalism across borders and how the type of content that we put out can help the audience and us with our mental health. So don't miss out this conversation to open up the third day of the conference on World Mental Health Day. This little face is there to remind me that it's time to close for the day. We're gonna do some celebrations here at the Self-Investigation team because we're very happy of how the day has gone. And we're also very happy that the day has ended and we're gonna get some rest, some good food, which we have a lot of in Spain, and then some rest so that we can bring our best selves to you tomorrow, once again, in the last day of the Mental Health in Journalism Summit. mhjournalismsummit.org for the full agenda. See you all tomorrow. Bye.